boarding in a facility is very traumatic for the animal anyway. They're miserable and, they'll maybe not eat, they'll get diarrhea, a lot of them get sick. I mean, imagine, it's like being in jail. I mean, they look depressed. I mean, it was terrible. Would you like to be in a little cage for like 3 weeks when you're by yourself? It's terrible. A dog and cat, which have such evolved feelings, to be in a cage and to smell sickness and death at hospitals, it's horrible. I mean, we would do autopsies, cut dead animals apart in front of the hospitalized animals, and the vets would laugh when they cut. And, they had no idea these animals really feel everything, more than we do even, with their sense of sense. How could you not know these animals are sentient creatures and feel every emotion?
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Ask Julie Ryan Show. It's where we blend spirituality and practicality to help you live a life of purpose and joy. We have Dr. Marcie Fallek with us on the show today. Marcie's a holistic veterinarian who, for more than 30 years, has combined a multitude of healing modalities to help her animal kingdom patients heal. Marcie's new book, Miracles Are Everywhere, is a memoir detailing her story of merging her spiritual and professional selves. Please remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share this episode with your family and friends. Now let's go talk with Marcie. Dr. Marcie, I'm so excited to have you on the show. Thank you for making the time for us.
My pleasure. Can't wait to meet you.
Well, as we were talking before we started recording, my daughter-in-law, Mallory, known as Dr. Mal, is a veterinarian. And I was talking with her last night. And I said, I'm going to have this holistic veterinarian on the show and find out what she's doing and how spirituality comes into the equation. And so she's really excited to see what you're up to, too. And I think some of the stuff that you're doing, she saw in vet school. As we get started, though, you believe animals have a natural ability to heal, and it's your duty to facilitate that. Please tell us more.
Well, I think we all have a natural ability to heal.
I agree.
Not just animals. And I don't think, true healing is stimulating the body to heal itself. So Western medicine uses toxic drugs to suppress symptoms. So it's really it's the wrong way of looking at health and disease. So I work with the energy medicines more than anything, which is homeopathy and acupuncture. And I have done a couple of hands-on healings as well, because ultimately all healing comes from God. But with the energy medicines, I'm not putting any drugs or anything into their body. I'm usually using energy taken from natural substances or needles to stimulate the body. And I treat everything, anywhere from behavioral things all the way to cancer. In fact, probably 80% of my caseload is cancer. And the body knows what to do. We just have to kind of nudge it along.
Right. I always say nobody heals anybody else. We all heal ourselves. And I was interested to learn that you feel the same way about animals. And then I thought, well, of course, it's all the same thing. We're all energy. So are the animals.
As is plants. Homeopathy, for example, I got a birch tree that died. It was my first tree that I bought, and I was upset. And I called the guy, and he replaced it, and it started to die also. And I'm like, what's going on? He says, it's in shock. I said, shock? So arnica is for shock. It's a homeopathic remedy. I sprinkled a little arnica with water on the birch tree, and it came to life again.
Oh, my God.
And there's a whole system of plant medicine, which is based on homeopathy. So you can heal everything, including the plants that have consciousness as well. We're all made of the same stuff.
Well, speaking of that, I love the stories and the articles about how trees communicate with each other via their roots. And if one tree is distressed, like your birch trees, the surrounding trees were sending it vitamins and nutrients and whatever else it needed to help it survive.
Yeah. And energetically, I think I heard a story. This was amazing. I don't know if I remember correctly, but there was something that happened, and it was a threat to the trees. And the trees actually communicated to each other that this threat was there. And this guy was doing experiments, and he just had the thought. He put the thought in his mind, I guess it was a way to measure how the trees were communicating the energy. And he had the thought in his mind, he just put it there that he's going to burn the tree. And they all like went like, oh my God, we have to protect ourselves. It was just the thought. It wasn't even that he did anything. So this consciousness, which is everything, is the divine matrix, actually.
Well, yeah, because thoughts have energy too, which is why they say it's so important, especially when we say to ourselves. I mean, we're our biggest critics when it comes to it. I'm too heavy, I'm too wrinkly, I'm too whatever, 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 whatever. And the body hears that, which is crazy. How does that work with animals since we're on that
Well, well, certainly people say, for example, this is kind of a little offshoot, that there's the placebo effect with certain. You can't have a placebo effect with animals, okay? Um, and I don't know. I mean, I see that the animals pick up the energy of their owner. So I don't know if the animal really thinks like I can't answer that question directly, but I will tell you they pick up the negative or positive energy of the people around them. And when I work homeopathically, most of the way I focus for any disease, including cancer, is their mental, emotional makeup. So I choose, let's say, grief is a very big trigger of disease. So I tell people that there are four main causes of chronic disease. One is vaccinations, which is the main cause of all the disease.
So, Marcy, what are you talking about when you say vaccines?
So I'm referring to animal vaccines that are used to immunize pets,
Okay. All right. Because vaccines covers a broad spectrum, and we're talking about just
specifically to immunize animals for different diseases.
perfect.
Then we have the flea and tick products, and we have any pharmaceuticals. Because I trace it back, I ask for the whole doctor's notes of the whole lifetime of the animal, and I just look at the chronology and what could trigger it, and then the proof is in the pudding. Because the homeopathic remedy can be an antidote to the vaccine, an antidote to the medication. It can be helping their emotional makeup. So emotions like grief, like somebody dying in the house or being left alone for a while, the owners go on vacation, can trigger anything. So, and it will not necessarily get better. So the animal can't talk themselves out of being sad. So that, I guess I'm getting to your question now. But I can use homeopathic remedies, for example, that address the grief state. And like in a few hours, they can be like a new dog. And they could have been lost. You know how if you have a couple that are married, one dies, the other one follows shortly afterwards. The same thing happens with two animals that live in a house or two dogs or cats, whatever. And the other one could be starting to fail, and you can give it a remedy for grief and it just rebounds. It's amazing.
What's the remedy for
Well,
grief?
there are many. There are probably about 16, but
Wow.
Ignatia, Ignatia, is a huge remedy for acute grief, which I've used a lot. Pulsatilla is another remedy. This is energy taken from plants, these particular ones, is when they're very needy. And niches goes up by themselves and they kind of hide. So there's like a certain constitutional picture for each homeopathic remedy. There's over 3,000 remedies. But like what I see, probably 80% of what I see is either they're really depressed and they hide, or they're very needy for their owner, and their other dog dies and they keep clawing at the owner for more attention and pulsatilla. But I don't recommend that you treat your own animal, because if you give too high a strength or you give the wrong one, you can make them get worse. So you should be under the care of a holistic veterinarian. So I don't recommend that. But the more you learn and books that you read, the more you'll know, and you can help your veterinarian.
Okay. So let's back up for a minute. Back to the animals healing themselves. You get an animal that comes in. My daughter in law, Dr. Mal, calls the animals her patients, calls their owners her humans, which I think is the cutest thing ever. She'll say, yeah, my patient was doing this, and its human was,
Yeah, yeah.
doing whatever, which I still get a kick out of that. That's what they teach them in vet school now is, yeah, they call the owners the humans. But anyways, when you have, let's say, a dog that comes in and the dog is presenting with whatever the symptoms are, what do you do?
What I typically do is I first of all, I have 2-hour slots per client. So I see them for 2 hours. And unfortunately, people come to me with very severe disease. They don't come to me for a little problem, but it's the same thing. I did see actually a couple of cats yesterday that had chronic respiratory problems. They're kittens. They're 5 months old. Been to 3 vets already. They couldn't make it better. So I did spend the same hour. It took me an hour with the kitten to get the right remedy. So I go over everything about them, as I say on my website, physical, emotional, and mental. So I go over the presenting symptoms just briefly to begin with. So let's say it's a GI problem. Like for example, I just saw a dog very sick. They diagnosed pancreatitis. Um, and I believed it to begin with. It wasn't getting better with their protocol, which I didn't agree with their protocol, but it wasn't getting better. But upon reviewing her history, so I asked for all the doctor's notes, I traced those particular symptoms back to a side effect for Apoquel, which is a very common um, medicine they give for allergies. And I'm not that familiar with it. I know it causes cancer, it's immunosuppressive. But when I just Googled side effects of this drug, every single symptom that this drug has is from that. At any rate, to give it the proper homeopathic remedy, I spend about a half an hour going over all its emotional, talk about from the time they got it, what kind of puppy it was. Was it a needy dog? Is it confident? What makes it fearful? So what makes up that dog? I mean, at the end of the 2 hours, they know more about their dog than they ever did before. So I find that I really want to understand the makeup of this is the same in animals of people. So I want to understand what makes, Nelly Nelly, for example. Then we go through all its history, any respiratory problems ever in its life, because symptoms are not the problem. Symptoms are a expression of an inner imbalance. And because Western medicine doesn't cure anything, it either palliates, which means makes it go away temporarily. Like you have an ear infection, you put antibiotics in there, goes away, but it comes back again, or it suppresses it. What happened to my dog when I was just starting on this path, 14-year-old Rottweiler mix, never had an ear infection in her life. She had an ear infection. I put in 1 dose of antibiotics. The ear infection went away and she went totally paralyzed. So that's suppression. So that's the way Western medicine works. When you're young and healthy, you can, it's same with people too. So you can tell, they have compressed lifespans. So it's more obvious in a dog or a cat than in people. Like many years can pass before something happens again. With animals, it's much quicker. So I'm going through all their symptoms that they ever had. And even if people say, oh, he only vomited up water 1 time after drinking, it doesn't matter. I've never done that. That's because the way that particular body is in the world. So they say it takes 20 years to be a good homeopath. And I would say that's probably true. I've been doing it for 30 years now. So it takes a while to really understand how to get to the root cause. But healing is also a process. You could see amazing results. For example, um, inflammatory bowel disease, vomiting, and diarrhea. So you can see that the dog or cat is better in a few days, but we have to heal the gut. So on an energetic level, I'm not giving vitamins or nutrition or drugs or anything. I'm giving energy from plants or minerals or something like that to help heal the gut. And it can take a year to heal the gut, but it's healed, meaning there's never ever a problem again. And that is not possible with Western medicine. But it does take time, and the money is not there the way it is in traditional medicine, which is why, unfortunately, so few new young vets are going into it. I can only see at this point, I see 2 new patients a day. I mean, I do everything myself to be able to survive in doing what I do. I have no staff. I do everything. So I used to see 8 new patients a day, which I don't know how I did it 7 days a week. But it takes time, but the rewards are amazing, which is what you saw with the testimonials on my website, because they've gone through the mill, they've gone through specialists and this and that, and they're just chronically ill and spending a ton of money. So it's my goal to really heal and to make the animals and the world a better place.
Is that why do you think the Dr. Mallory's told me that veterinary medicine is the number one area of dissatisfaction for careers, number one, and number two, highest rate of suicide?
I don't think it's that. I think that's what they're raising the fees, I think, to the compensation to make it better. I was in conventional care. I didn't own my own practice for about 10 years. It's very stressful. I mean, they have 10-minute. It's not for this. It's not because they're not making them better. It's because the owners can get irate. There's a lot of emotions, which I get also. And with the 10-minute windows for appointments and the animals you bring in the back. I mean, I haven't been in the conventional world for 30 years, but it is generally a very stressful and unsatisfying because you have irate owners. And I mean, there is another way, which is the way that I went. So the small group of us around the world, I just came back from a conference in Scotland. Um, it was the 100th anniversary of the Faculty of Homeopathy, and for medics, medical doctors, and vets from around the world, there was like 350 of us, which is not a lot, and half of them are retired. But if the veterinarians want to look for a more satisfying way of uh, working within a profession, there is another way outside of that chaos that they work in. It's chaotic, I would say.
Yeah. Well, and we hear the same thing out of human doctors as well. They talk about that they got 6.7 minutes with the patient and they've got to do 30 patients a day and they don't, they just don't in their bag of tricks all they have are medicine and surgery and things like that. All right, let's back up a minute. I always find that there's an emotional component in place with humans before any kind of medical condition arises. It sounds to me, based on the research that I've done on you, that you're finding that there's an emotional component most of the time in place as well. Is that the
What do
case?
you mean for the animals get
For
nervous
the
before?
animals. Well, no, that like somebody that's got cancer, there's always an emotional component in place before the cancer manifests. And it seems that once we identify the emotional component, in addition to the Eastern and Western medicine and the energy medicine that I do with them, it's the whole equation. It's all part of the healing equation.
I think people live more in their minds than animals. I think animals are simpler. So as I said, I mean, they're straightforward, they're honest. As I said, when I work up a case, I do bring their emotional being into play. Um, but the cancers that I see are mostly caused by vaccinations and flea and tick products and drugs.
Wow.
So yeah, so
Huge
there. Well,
statement.
let me tell you, when
Goodness.
I started practicing 40 years ago, dogs lived until their early 20s. Cats lived into their late 20s, typically. Okay. Now at 8 or 5, they're saying they're older, middle aged. It's ridiculous. They're living shorter and shorter lives. And and I met a woman in Russia, from Russia, when I was at the dog park when I first started practicing. And she said, I never saw such sick dogs until I came to America. She said, we give them one puppy shot, we feed them raw food, and they live till they're 18. We never take them to the vet. So, we are creating this disease. And what's happening also, it's hereditary. So I don't think I agree with what you say with people. I think I have a friend that's very fearful, was always fearful of getting cancer, and now she has cancer, very young woman. But I don't think the animals are thinking like that. I mean, if they can get diarrhea or something from being grieving, but they live more in the moment. I mean, they're not that cerebral. So I don't think it plays that big a part, actually.
Mhm. So that whole pattern of you gotta take the dog in every year for its shots, you gotta, do all of that stuff. That's
It's a
all.
it's a it's a scam. I mean, the thing is now what's happening even worse is the corporations are buying up the vet practices. So in the old days, I won't say I'm that old, but I've been practicing 40 years and it was still in play. It's just more and more vaccines are coming in. But what I hear from the generation before me, they gave 1 or 2 vaccines. That's it. They don't keep doing it. Like I got 2 vaccines as a child. That's it. And it lasts and you don't have to keep doing all this stuff. Um, and that's a whole other story. But yeah, no, I mean, now it's even worse. They do blood work twice a year. It's just to generate more money. It's crazy. I mean, I do blood work or recommend blood work when there's a problem. But my dog is 5 now. I rescued her from Russia. She had vaccines before she came, and she's had no medical issues at all. Zero, 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 zero. I mean, she's had nothing. She got kennel cough once. So they shouldn't be so sick. And it's just, and I tell my clients, I tell them, if there's anything wrong with your dog or cat, like the dog is licking the cement, or the dog is drinking more water, or hiding more, or more needy, bring them to me. But if everything is great, you don't have to bring them to me. You don't have to bring them to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, I see a lot of dermatological, clients that their dogs just got these rashes and they're licking and they're
That
just
is from vaccine. So the skin is an organ of detox the skin. So usually, I do vaccinate minimally as little as I have to. And I have a healthy puppy, let's say, I give it a vaccine and a week later has an ear infection. And if they took it to a regular vet, they put antibiotics in the ear. And the next step is starts getting skin problems because we're not letting the discharge, we're not working with the body to heal the discharge in the ear, which is what I do. Instead, we're suppressing it. So the next place it goes is the skin. So that's the second cardinal sin. The first is the vaccine that causes the first problem. We have the antibiotics, then it goes to the skin. So it is rampant, but it is the body trying to detox itself. So then they give it baths, and then they give it antibiotics, and then they give it this, and then they give it that. But
steroids. A lot of steroids I hear
well,
about.
now the Apoquil, which is the new one that causes all the problems, is taking the place of the steroids now. And then and then that doesn't work. They use the strongest immunosuppressive drugs that they use, like when you want to not have when you have a organ transplant, you don't want the body to reject it. They're just using stronger and stronger immunosuppressive drugs. Where are you going to go with that? So what I'm doing is working with the immune system, and a more spiritual level. When I've done a couple of hands-on healings, God has healed them without anything, because everything, again, as I said, comes from the divine. But Samuel Hahnemann, I don't know if you know anything about homeopathy. He's from the 1700s. And it was sort of like divinely inspired how he figured out this whole system. So, it was basically when the Rockefeller and Carnegie foundations came in the early 1900s with their oil, the Rockefeller oil, and they wanted to figure out a way to use the petroleum-based products, that they put all the homeopathic hospitals and doctors out of business within a couple of years. But this was the way, like with the herbs, with the homeopathy, to really heal the body in a gentle, proper way.
Mhm. How do you treat those skin
With
issues that are chronic?
homeopathy, with homeopathy.
So, like, are there certain herbs you
So
use? Are
no,
you
homeopathy
using
is not herbs. So basically, have you heard of arnica ever, for
I
example?
have, sure, yeah.
So arnica is a homeopathic remedy
And
that
for people that aren't familiar with arnica, tell us about arnica.
so arnica is one of thousands of homeopathic remedies. It's taken from a plant. And see, most remedies, homeopathy is very difficult, as I said before, and you really need a lot of years to understand how to do it. But arnica works so well generically in so many trauma, or inflammation or wound situations, um, that even plastic surgeons are using it, surgeons are using it. So it's a remedy to help the body heal itself from trauma, from concussions, let's say, or you fall and you get a bruise on your head, a black and blue mark, or something like that, or you have surgery. And my dentist is using it also for any kind of trauma. So it speeds up healing. You will see that something can heal in 15 minutes when it may take a week otherwise. So with these acute remedies, so basically Samuel Hahnemann in the 1700s, at that time they were using very toxic stuff, as we are now, but it was different. They used mercury and I don't know, all kinds of poisons. And he said this, and he was a physician, and he said, "This is terrible. We're killing our patients." So we tried to dilute um, the let's say the mercury down to an infinitesimal amount, that there is really nothing there but the energetic imprints in water, basically. And it was actually comes from the ancient Greeks, that like treats like. And so let's say somebody had, so one symptom of mercury poisoning can be, you know, bad pussy wounds and this and that. So when he saw that somebody had really nasty green pussy wounds, and he used the homeopathic, which means the energetic form without any material um, element of the mercury in it, and he gives it to them, they will be healed. So it's like treats like. It's kind of difficult to explain, actually. I usually recommend on my website, which is holisticvets.us, I have a link called Demystifying Homeopathy with a little pamphlet on, which explains how homeopathy works. So it's pretty involved. It took me quite a while to understand it myself. But basically, it is like treating like, and you get the whole picture. Like, as I said, the wounds is pretty easy if you hurt yourself. But when you're dealing, let's say, with cancer or even an ear infection, it's very involved. It's not what kind of bacteria. It makes no difference what kind of bacteria is in there. What makes a difference is what triggered it. So, for example, if you eat something bad, you get diarrhea. The body's trying to cleanse itself. You get something in your eye tears, is the body trying to heal itself. So, the causation and the exact symptomatology, the kind of discharge that comes out, and the way the body's responding to it. Let's say the dog is very, very itchy, or the dog is depressed. All those things go into choosing the proper remedy. So, but arnica is a very simple one that most people are aware of. They use it in physical therapy. So, if you overuse your muscles, again, that's kind of trauma, you will immediately get better. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And I wanna get into your whole buffet of methodologies because I know you use several
Yeah, yeah.
treat a patient depending on what their issues are. Before we get there, how did this even come about? Did you grow up as a kid thinking, "I wanna be a vet"? Did you I know your first degree is not in veterinary
So, yeah,
medicine,
I'm a philosophy and literature major.
right?
And I loved animals so much. Everybody wanted me to be a vet, my whole family. And I had no interest because I didn't like science and I didn't like medicine. I had no interest. And I wanted to cuddle with animals. And I thought I wanted to be a horse trainer. And I never took a science course in high school because I was not interested in science. I was more of a artsy type of person. Finally, after many jobs that were like glorified secretarial jobs, basically, I knew I couldn't do this anymore. And I finally listened to my mother and I looked into going to vet school. And my option was either to go back and do my sciences, 2 years of sciences. And I had a 3.9 average. I had a good average, but I had to go back and get 4.0 in all the sciences and live at home, which was not an option for me. Or I found out I'd be going to vet school in Italy. I said, Italy, that sounds great. I
Why
met them
Italy?
at that they were it had open enrollment in at that time. I went to vet school in 1976, and they let anybody in. There was no pre-requirements. And I found out that there was a whole contingent of Americans, hundreds of Americans that went to vet school in Italy. And I was so excited about living in Italy. I'd lived in London for a year, and I wasn't even thinking about vet school. I just wanted to go live in Italy. It wasn't Italian. I had to learn Italian. The reason it was open enrollment at that point was that 80% of the students failed that. It was like an attrition. Anybody can go in. There was like an upheaval um, in the 60s that everybody should be able to go to school without paying. So why is it so elitist? So they had open enrollment. It cost nothing. It was free. Free. I spent $100,000, believe me, going there for 10 years. But you just pay the taxes. It was free, but basically 80% of the people flunked out. Anyway, after vet school, which took me 10 years, as it does most Americans to get through because of the language and the way that it's set up. And if you want to read my book, you can learn about how the Italian vet school is set up. It's very funny.
Is it much different than the American
Oh
vets?
my God. I mean, oh my God. It's completely different.
So you graduated from the Italian vet school and then you wanted to move back to America. Did you have to take the regular vet boards?
Well, then it's a whole other thing. I had to study the American system. It's completely different all by myself.
Right.
So I had to get old exam notes and I had to I did the whole American vet school all by myself. But after the Italian one, it was a breeze. It took me only a year. So I learned it all myself and I passed everything the first time.
Okay. So then you go into practice and tell us about that. And then tell us when you realized, okay, there's got to be more to the story than this.
I worked 7 days a week for many years, like 100 hours, 7 days a week, 100 hours a week. No time for anything, learning everything because I had no practical experience. In Italy, the reason it's so cheap at that time, it's different now. There was no animals. It was all book knowledge.
Oh, wow.
They didn't have the money. So I had to learn. I had to go to I had to learn everything on my own here. So I was learning and to do surgery, to do all this stuff. And you're so busy, you don't think about anything. They just make you work like crazy. The time that I was when it graduated in 1986, I made 20,000 a year, working 100 hours a week. So I made, probably less than the technician, working as many hours as I did. So, I was just really busy, not realizing that I didn't have a life. But what happened was I had a dog that injured her cruciate, tore her cruciate.
So tell everybody what a cruciate is.
So the cruciate ligaments It's what people know as football knees, which I don't know because I don't know football, but there's two ligaments that hold the tibia and the femur together, and dogs can tear that. Do you know yourself, Julie, about cruciates? Yeah, so it's usually a surgical procedure.
People who are listening may not know about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's why I'm
So
asking you about
it's
it.
there's it's cruciate is crossed. So these two cross ligaments that hold the leg together, the thigh and the lower leg together. And they say it's from trauma, but actually it's mostly from vaccine injury. Vaccines.
Wow.
Yep. I had a biopsy. This is when I learned about vaccine injury. This is in 1990, I think. So yeah, I went to it. So what happened was I didn't want to do surgery. I didn't want to do anti-inflammatories. So I heard about an acupuncturist. So I took her to the acupuncturist, who actually didn't help her, because acupuncture does not work well for this particular situation. But he told me about vaccines causing this problem and had me talk to the head of immunology at Cornell Vet School, that he'd be happy to tell me about cruciate damage and autoimmune disease. And he sent me this whole um, article that I think he had written, and he spent a half an hour on the phone with me and recommended that I biopsy her synovial membrane if and when I had to do the surgery, which I eventually had to do. And in fact, it came back autoimmune mediated. So my dog was a Rottweiler who barely could work. She didn't run, she strolled. She was like a truck. She never ran. And it's very common in Rottweilers. And what I have seen, it is from a Lyme vaccine actually that caused her to rupture. So I didn't believe it. I mean, this I tell about in my book too. I was vaccinating 45 animals a day. That's basically what I did as an associate, vaccinated, vaccinated, vaccinated. And I didn't put two and two together. But when I learned about it, eventually, when I went to study homeopathy and acupuncture, well, backtracking a second, the acupuncture didn't help my dog. She did eventually need surgery. But I had witnessed so many miraculous healings in the guy's office, I decided to enroll in the certification course for acupuncture. And I was thrilled to just have a whole new way of healing. I loved it. I still work my 100-hour-a-week job, but in the evenings and on my rare Sunday off, every third Sunday, I would do acupuncture. I do house calls or whatever. And I was just so excited. And that led me to want to do more. I knew I wanted to leave conventional medicine behind. I mean, it was amazing. I would be treating the hopeless cases, that no one could help. They're destined for euthanasia or whatever. And it was great. And so I wanted to put more tools in my toolbox. I decided to study homeopathy, and that put more tools in my toolbox. So my two main modalities are those energetic modalities. I do use herbs and supplements, but they usually, except for an acute problem, herbs are generally not strong enough. Okay. So if you have like IBD, inflammatory bowel disease or Crohn's disease or something like that, just taking slippery elm or an herb is usually not enough. I mean, my goal is to cure the animal. So it can ease the symptoms, but it's not going to cure the dog. So my goal is cure, getting the dog off of everything, healed like a puppy again, doing better at 13 than they were at 3. That's my goal. I mean, sometimes when the animals come to me at 14, I'm never going to reach that goal, but I don't want to just help the dog. I want to make it as good as I can get it. And so what I see with supplements, I generally tell my clients that supplements can maybe do about 20%. Homeopathy or acupuncture can do 100%. We do the two of them together. That's fine initially. I do some cranial sacral. I do use some Bach flower. But most cases are the energetic things because I really see very bad. The last, I call myself the 11th hour vet. When everything else has failed.
Last ditch effort. W As far as the acupuncture goes, back to Dr. Mount, they taught them acupuncture in vet school when she was there, and they brought in chiropractic people, and they're expanding into some of that in the current vet schools. She graduated probably 6 years ago, something like that, so it's fairly recently that that was going on. When you combine all of those together and you're with a patient, do you just get a thought in your head like, "Okay, they need this, this, and this," Or how does that work? How are you led by spirit? Obviously, you've been led to do all of this stuff.
I was ready to leave conventional care. I was so disgusted by what was happening. I mean, again, in my book, it'll tell my backstory, but I was so disgusted at I think when I first started practicing, it was mostly men, and mostly they wanted to go to medical school and they didn't get in. Now it's almost all women, and it is much more difficult. There's been a shift. Um, and they did not love animals, most of the people that I work for. I mean, it's different now. The women are more caring that are there, but there's been a big shift in the past 40 years. Um, but I was so disgusted by the treatment of the animals that I saw. I really wanted another. I would leave. I would have left my profession, to be honest with you. So God did lead me to this. And I didn't fit in. I hated surgery. I didn't trust drugs. I didn't do vaccines anymore. There was not very much left for me to do. But this was what I was meant to do. This was absolutely, I mean, it's my passion. It's true healing. And it's logic also, and I try to empower my clients to trust their inner voice. That's my biggest takeaway for all of them. To trust your gut, to be where to be led, what to do, not to trust people just because they're wearing a white coat. I mean, I'm sure your daughter-in-law is wonderful, and I'm glad she's really open to holistic, but so many, um doctors are just so close-minded. They don't you'll see in my memoir, when I get successes, they get angry. The board-certified surgeons are angry when my animals get better. They don't like it's an ego thing for them, I think, and a loss of income. I mean, I know of one neurologist that is an acupuncturist who left acupuncture because you don't make very much money at it, and he will tell his clients to euthanize the dogs if they don't want to spend the money on back surgery, when acupuncture works fantastic for herniated discs. I mean, just think about that. Yeah. So, it was very disheartening to me what I was seeing, you know?
Mhm. So, I know that when you left Italy, you went to India for a while too. Tell us about that.
I was looking for God, and I was really, um, didn't feel God would prefer one religion over another. I didn't believe that he sent to hell. I happen to be Jewish, but I'm not tied to that, whatever. I always liked Jesus, and it doesn't matter to me. To me, there's one God. And finally, when I heard about Satya Sai Baba, who's the ashram that I went to, his symbol is all the different religions of the world. There's only one God, and he has many names. And finally, something resonated, because that was really from the time I had an abusive childhood. And from the time I was little, I'd be praying to a God that I didn't know if existed for help. And that's why I became a philosophy major. I was looking for truth and for God. And finally, in 1980, it took me 20 years to really believe I had so many miracles in my life. It's like crazy. Um, it took me 20 years to absolutely 100% know that the divine is directing everything, that we're part of the divine, we're all part of it, and we all have our part to play. And, I have to, learn also many things that I know, like not to judge, like not to be angry. Everybody plays their part. I can get angry at what I see going on in the medical field, whatever. But, God, it's all in God's hands. So the biggest lesson is just to trust and surrender. Um, and that's what I do. See, I was not a very good I mean, I was not good with my hands. I was not good with surgery. I was always afraid I would cut the animal and kill the animal. I was terrified. But and I was a perfectionist, so I was so afraid of using the wrong antibiotic, or I wanted to do everything right, and I always asked everybody. I was driving my bosses crazy. But being a holistic vet by myself here in Connecticut with no one to ask, it taught me to go into my inner voice. So that's what I do. It's incredible. I mean, and there are homeopathic vets or holistic vets that confer with one another. I don't have anybody. And I go inward and I get the answers.
Can you describe that for us?
It's I just turn inward. It's even when I'm choosing furniture, I was designing my kitchen, like going inward, what feels right. So I mean, you have to have some kind of knowledge. I mean, you need a little bit of you need some to know what the remedies or whatever the acupuncture points are. But I just kind of tune in. It's a very easy, simple thing. I tune in and I listen. It's
What
not,
does that mean, you tune in?
I don't know what it means. I mean, it just like right now, I'm trying to do it right now as I speak to you. I just kind of blur out the outer world and kind of feel inside. I guess it's my heart chakra, I would say. I'm trying to think of where my energy's going because it's not only in my head, I'm feeling something here, which is directing me what to do. And it feels right or it doesn't feel right. And it's about trusting the feeling. So, yeah, it's just about learning to trust your instincts because we are all part of the divine and we're all connected. And, being as I was insecure and perfectionist, I didn't trust myself. But now I could see that I'm like, I just had a phone call from a woman, and the woman, the human, was telling me the symptoms of her dog. And in a minute or less, I said, "Your dog probably has a brain tumor." And I told her what to do. She wanted to see me. And I said, "But, I usually don't, I'm not into tests, but it's a 3-year-old dog." And I said, "You really need to get a CAT scan or MRI so we can be sure at such a young age." She said, and I told her what to do. And she said, "I've gotten more out of my 5-minute conversation on the phone with you than 3 weeks at my 3 different veterinarians." And it's just, I think, you just have to trust that you have the knowledge, you don't, it's there. It's there. The universal knowledge is there to trust it. And the people, so many times the people come to me and they were listening to the vet and they did something they didn't believe was right, but they listened and they were right. They were right. They said, they were so angry. I should have trusted myself. I should have trusted myself. My inner voice told me not to do this, and I did it anyway. So there are so few of us. My goal is to empower people, and that's my book is about, really, to learn to trust our inner voice in anything, in finding our path in life, in what's good for ourselves. And I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but I want to tell people to listen to themselves and trust themselves. And I guess that's what's happened to me over the past 30 years as a holistic veterinarian.
When you're practicing now, and I on your website, I mean, you belong to a lot of societies and a lot of
Yeah, a
there's bunches of
lot of
them.
dues. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah. So, do you have to be licensed in the state of Connecticut to practice veterinary medicine even from a holistic standpoint?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm licensed in New York, Connecticut, and Florida. Different states are more rigorous. I don't know what's going on now. I mean, to be holistic, you do have to have a license,
A
um,
regular license
a
like
regular,
unconventional that would yeah.
a regular license. There there's some gray area. I mean, now they're doing Zoom things. My friend who's a lawyer said, they have now MDs in India that are reading radiology reports and giving advice. So I don't know. Things are really changing now,
It's been going on for a long time. They've been using radiologists in
but even more
Australia
so
for
now.
30
I guess
years.
it's a gray area because a lot of doctors are doing Zoom things now. But yeah, I'm only practicing in the states that I'm licensed in.
Okay, so
Um,
you have a regular veterinarian license, like a conventional veterinarian, and do you have to have some other kinda license to do the holistic stuff, or that's just your prerogative?
Yeah, no, that I spent I went for 15 years to study homeopathy and 2 years to study acupuncture with continuing education stuff. No, I'm certified in acupuncture. There's no um, you don't need a special license. If that answer your question.
Yeah, it does. And then as far as the vaccine things go, I know in order to board a pet, most of the time they are required to have certain vaccines. Is that
Well,
true?
yes. Yes. The only thing that's required by law, and it depends which state you're in and how good it's for, is the rabies. And the rabies vaccine is probably good for 10 years. Some states mandated for 1 year, some mandated for 3 years. The rest is not necessary at all legally. I boarding in a facility is very traumatic for the animal anyway. What I recommend is to find someone to come to your house or someone to take your animal if possible. They're not a happy situation when they're boarded in a facility or in a hospital is even worse.
Tell us more about that, because there are a lot of people that board their pets because they don't feel like they have any
Yeah, I mean,
alternatives.
mm, they're stuck in cages or runs. They're miserable, and, they'll maybe not eat, they'll get diarrhea, a lot of them get sick. But imagine, it's like being in jail. I mean, it broke my heart, and my one of this place that I worked at for 6 years, they were good veterinarians, and they would call it the animals incarcerated. I mean, they looked depressed. I mean, it was terrible. Would you like to be in a little cage for, like, 3 weeks when you're by yourself? It's terrible. So and then there are some, I guess, boarding facilities, um, where but they still put them in cages at night usually. Um, there are some, like, small places like home. I have a woman that takes a couple of dogs in her house, a few dogs at a time at night, and they're free, and she has to make sure they all get along, so that's good. But to be caged is very stressful. I mean, we're not very different. Animals I was just watching a Facebook video about a little, crab. This woman talking to a crab that understands everything and plays. I mean, we all have the divine consciousness. Even a fish. I talk about in my book, a fish that was dying of grief. They put it in a room all by itself. It was dying because it was alone. So, a dog and cat, which have such evolved feelings, to be in a cage and to smell sickness and death at hospitals, it's horrible. I mean, we would do autopsies, cut dead animals apart in front of the hospitalized animals, and the vets would laugh when they cut. And, they had no idea these animals really feel everything more than we do, even with their sense of sense. And that's one of the things that discouraged me most about the conventional world is they didn't appreciate the feeling. I mean, I don't have children. My animals are my children. I wanted animals more than children to begin with. But how could you not know these animals are sentient creatures and feel every emotion? And they, and they didn't. That's what I saw. Again, I'm not in the field for 30 years, so maybe hopefully things are better now.
Yeah. The, book, let's talk about your book. And I love the title of it. It's about miracles. What is the title? I know I've got it here, but tell us. What's the title of your book
Little
first?
miracles everywhere. My unorthodox path to holistic veterinary medicine. I mean, basically, I I heard an inner voice how this book came about. I was going to a homeopathic conference, and my divine inner voice told me I need to write a memoir, my spiritual journey. And that was 17 years ago. And I started writing about feeding the homeless dogs at the ashram in India. And then after the first paragraph, I didn't know where to go and I put it away. And I'm like, why would anybody be interested in my spiritual path? And then I realized it was really about my professional life. My spiritual and my professional life were intertwined. And I knew people would be very interested in the miraculous healings that
Yeah.
I've been a part of.
Yeah.
And so I started writing with a wonderful editor that was a miracle how I found her. And a memoir is usually a year. This covers 20 years. And she said, that's too much. And she said, you're writing 2 books. You have your spiritual part and your professional part. Because she had asked me, what was the most important thing in your life? The most important thing in my life was finding God. But again, who would be interested in my finding God? It was about my professional. So she said, it is a miracle what you've done. Have you intertwined the two of them? It's become a bestseller. And I was looking for a title. I mean, I just wrote my story. Um, and there were so many miracles, so many miracles. And then it hit me, Little Miracles Everywhere. Little Miracles Everywhere was the name of it. And then my publishing company, I just said a memoir of a holistic veterinarian, and they wanted to put that in there. But there's just, I mean, God, it's about God directing me. I don't even think it's I don't think there was some miraculous healings where I did hands-on healings and God healed them through me like immediately. It was not my acupuncture. It wasn't me. It was God. I just meditated and God came through and healed.
Right.
Um, the other ones I don't think are really miracles. It's just understanding how to use these modalities. But there was so many, getting fired so many times is what led me down my path. When you think something is disastrous, you never know what's going to happen. The things that are disguised as catastrophes are really miracles. So I think it's Kierkegaard that said, life can only be lived forward, but it's only understood backwards. So when you look at your life and you realize you wouldn't have got where you gotten unless you went through what you went through.
Right.
And, and the connecting dots were all these miracles that brought me where I am, because I tell you, I did not fit into conventional care at all. And my last job fired me because they said we have different ways of looking at life. And I was devastated, but they were right. And this was what I was meant to do. So I'm so grateful to God, because so grateful. All these years were not wasted.
Can you give us some examples of some of the little miracles that you've witnessed? Can you give us a couple of examples?
Well, yeah, one of them I'll talk about. This is more, yeah. So I was transitioning from being holistic, from being conventional to holistic. I was getting bigger, more and more clients. So I left finally my last part-time job to become 100% holistic. And all of a sudden, all the phone calls stopped. For 3 months, I had no calls. First month, that's okay. I'm relaxing. The second month, I started doing things, folding my clothes and cleaning up my closets. The third month, I started getting really nervous. And as I was walking to my phone to pick up messages, I hear this voice behind me. I live alone, this deep male booming voice that said, I turned around, it was absolutely the voice that spoke to Moses with the burning bush. And the voice said, you just take care of the ones that you have, and I will take care of the rest. And the next day, the phone started ringing off the hook. And I'm telling you, and what's happened is whenever, like when one of my dogs was dying and had to be taken care of, the phone calls stopped. So it's like trusting. That's a huge miracle. Another simpler miracle, no one from Italy had ever passed the New York boards the first time. In fact, I didn't even want to take them because it was only a few months after graduating. Anyway, there are different stations that you have to go to: goats and chickens and laboratory animals and horses and cows. Anyway, I knew nothing about goats. This is in my book. And I go in there, and you're standing in a corral with a teacher and a goat. And he starts asking me questions, and I know nothing, and I'm completely humiliated. And he's wearing around his neck like a clipboard with the answers on it. And he lifts up the clipboard for me to read the answers. Like every time he asked a question, he lifted it higher, and I was trying not to look, but he was giving me the answers. Nobody else had that. God wanted me to pass that the first time. So that's another little miracle. I mean, some of the healing miracles, which are in the book. There was a dog hit by a car, and it broke its back. It was like a layer cake, and it went to the orthopedic surgeon, and they said, forget about it. A body cast for 6 months, but probably it's best you put the dog to sleep. I mean, with acupuncture and homeopathy, in 6 weeks, it was completely healed, running fine. The X-ray showed it was completely aligned and healed. So that's, yeah. So those, what happens at this point after 30 years, if I'm not able to heal them, I'm frustrated. I used to be really excited with all these miraculous healings, but now it's what I expect, and I'm angry at myself if it doesn't happen. So
Yeah.
there are all of that.
Well, and do you ever send one of your patients back to conventional vet med?
I do, because I'm not a full-scale hospital.
Right.
And generally, the vets have been very angry and irritated. They don't say, wow, this is amazing. They go, they're not happy. They're not happy.
No, I mean, you have a dog or a cat or a pet that I'm assuming you just do dogs and cats. Do you do like
Well, I've
birds
done
and
little,
reptiles and
I like
stuff
new
like
animals.
that?
I don't do large animals. I wish I did, but I like doing new animals. So I've done raccoons and guinea pigs and things like that. Yeah, no, I don't have full-scale hospital. So when one dog, it's in the book, it was in kidney failure. It was dying, dying that day. And after my treatment, it was like 100% better. And he brought the dog back to the regular vet for blood work. And it was perfect. And the guy just got really angry. Like, I could have given you something else. Why didn't you? Whatever. But yes, I don't, they have to go back to their regular vet for standard things. Let's say they need an X-ray, or they need blood work, or dentistry or something. So they do go back. And it's I need vets to work with. I want open. I need them, it's very difficult. So, I mean, unfortunately, my clients have to lie a lot and not tell them how the animal got better. Um, they like I had a client, the cat was in heart failure. Went to I sent it to a cardiologist. I thought she should go. She wanted to just work for me, but I wanted a cardiologist to look at it. The medication they put the cat on made the cat very, very sick. And she came to me, I said, "Okay, so the cat got sick on the meds, let's try my thing." My thing got it better. It was 100% better, but she didn't wanna alienate the cardiologist because she wanted him for follow-up. So she pretended it was the drugs that made the cat better, which is really sad. I mean, it's between a rock and a hard place. So I want vets to be open to work with. I need regular vets. I'm not against conventional medicine in some situations, but it's very difficult to find open-minded vets.
So where do you see this evolving? Where do you see veterinary care in a perfect world? It sounds like, you know, if you combine the 2, that would be the best of all scenarios.
Well, I think it's happening. So I actually, with the acupuncture and chiropractic, that's because of pressure from the humans. So I actually went recently to a continuing education conference where there's probably the guy was a Chinese acupuncturist from California that maybe your daughter-in-law knows that was talking about this. And he said it was from pressure from clients to be holistic and stuff. So that's where it has to come from, that the clients have to demand. And I think people are getting, now that the corporations have come into the play, and a typical cancer case is $30 to $50,000. I mean, it's crazy, crazy. That's why I treat most of the cancer, because my bill will be like 800 as opposed to 50,000 or 30,000.
Wow. Wow.
So I think when people can't afford it anymore, I mean, it's just a vicious cycle because then you have the insurance coming in, just like the people, the human medicine. There is more demand than ever for holistic care from the people. There's going to be a lot of pushback because there's just not the money. If you spend 2 hours, they spend 10 minutes to pay for their overhead. They can't spend 2 hours, you know? I don't know where it's going to be because there is more demand. The corporations are coming in. Where I'd like to see, yes, is that there is, facilities where they have all the options there. Um, you know, it's a lot about the money though, unfortunately. I mean, to be very honest, when I saw what they're offering first year graduates right now, it's like 3 times what I make after 40 years working 7 days a week, and they get so many benefits. There's not enough veterinarians now. They're just offering so much money. There's very little incentive for people. In fact, there was a young veterinarian in my area. I cured his dog beautifully, and he's young. And I said, "Why don't you go into holistic medicine?" He said, "You work too hard for too little money." I'm not going to do that. He said it,
Yeah.
you know? So they don't want to do it, So what I wish there was, like you said, a licensing for holistic, not to go through regular vet school. Like you can do certain things in human medicine and not be an MD. You can be a chiropractor or you can be an acupuncturist. So I wish there was that option for veterinarians non-veterinarians. So somebody can practice there. Actually, you don't have to be human chiropractors can treat animals. Actually, you don't have to be a veterinarian to be a chiropractor. But
Really?
no.
I never heard that.
Yep. Yep. Mhm. At least in my state, yep. Which they've done damage, actually. I've had them do damage. But yeah, you could have a human chiropractor treat animals.
Huh.
And maybe that's just in New York and Connecticut, I don't know.
Interesting. One of my best friends has horses, and I know that chiropractors out there all the time at her farm.
Acupuncture, in my opinion, works deeper than chiropractic, but chiropractic medicine definitely can help. So, if there was ways to at least alleviate some of the symptoms that they don't have to go down the road to doing surgery and drugs, that would be great. But going back to what I said before, when they come to me and they starting even at 3 years old now with all these diseases, which are from the drugs and everything else, I mean, if we could just learn to teach people to avoid those things. So right now they do titers for vaccines, for example. They don't have to do the vaccines every year like before. They're doing it every 3 years, which they still don't have to do it every 3 years. But if we can empower the people to learn what is medically necessary and to push back and to have, let's say, I'm not going to go to your hospital anymore. If you make me get a vaccine every year, which the dog does or cat doesn't need, I'm going to go to another vet. So, there needs to be some incentive for these vets to change course. I don't know what it's going to take, but things are changing, I think, because of the people. We have to push back.
Couple of other questions as we're winding down here. I keep hearing in my head from spirit, I call that divine downloads. I keep hearing, are there some basic things that everybody watching and listening that has pets, are there some basic things that they can do to help their pet be healthy? You mentioned raw food earlier. Though, can you name like 3 things that a pet owner can do to help keep their animal healthy?
Well, to stay away from the veterinarian. Okay, stay away from the vet. Listen to your inner voice. Give raw. The many vets are going to tell you don't give raw food. It's that have salmonella. So that's my point here. If you could say eat raw food, they're going to say, "Oh, it's terrible to get salmonella. Your dog gets sick." That's what they say. I mean, things are shifting now because people are reading articles on the internet about raw feeding, and now more because of client demand, there are more companies. So it is shifting. Um, you know, don't board your animals. Get somebody to take care of them at home. Make sure they have plenty of exercise. Um, look for natural products. Don't use medications. I mean,
Is filtered water a thing?
yes. I mean, yes, it is. You don't want tap water has lots of poisons in it. If you have a really good filter, that would be good. I mean, bottled water, you don't want to use anything that says purified water. That's basically tap water with preservatives in it. So don't trust purified water. And then we get into the whole plastic issue. So a lot of people use bottled water and we don't know how good that is. I mean, I'm very wary of the human food chain at this point. So I say get human grade food, but I'm very wary of what I eat now too. Now it's legal to put pesticides and wax on organic fruits and vegetables. Did you know that? You go into Whole Foods. So I don't know what to trust. I mean, it's very hard, and looking up online, it's very difficult. Things are being censored right and left, so things that I used to be able to research, I'm not able to research. If you research homeopathy, it's gonna say it's quackery, and I've been doing it for 30 years. It's been around for 300 years. It's not quackery. So I guess it's don't even trust the internet. I mean, trust sources like holistic vets that have been in this for a while that have recommendations. Trust friends of yours. It's very hard to get honest information these days.
So is there a holistic vet association that somebody can go online and put their zip code in and find somebody
Yes.
practicing in their area?
The best one is theavh.org. It's the Academy of Veterinary Homeopathy.org. So those have the vets that are most committed. There is the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association that has many more vets, but it's a very broad spectrum of vets. You don't need any credentials to do that. Anybody can say they're holistic. So what I've seen, unfortunately, a lot of vets pretend to be holistic. They do everything the conventional vets do, and I have colleagues that do this that I know, and they sell supplements on top of it because they see that they just can't make it financially without doing the bad stuff. So, what I tell people is to ask the holistic vet, what's their vaccination protocol? If they give you a whole smorgasbord of vaccines, they are not holistic. So it should be, as little as possible to protect them, risk versus benefit. Um, so those are the two organizations, but you still have to be careful. You still have to be careful. So the less drugs, the more modalities. There are probably, I mean, unfortunately, I'd say maybe there's about 20 or 30 of us in America that are really holistic, not a lot.
Do you work with people online?
I do phone consults. I do phone consults. It's hard to do a Zoom with an animal to really get there, you know, uh, to see them properly. I do. I try to see people if I can in person. I do recommend that they see a regular vet if they're going to work with me and have the exam and have everything sent to me. But I'm not. I'm not. I don't have enough time in the day to help all the people that need help. So I would love your daughter-in-law she could connect to me. I'd be very happy to talk to her. We've got to get more people interested, more young people to get involved with us. There are some holistic vets that give courses online to teach them. That's a very good thing. Like there's a Jeffrey Feynman, there's a Will Falconer. They teach homeopathy to owners to treat their own animals. So I would look into that. Home teaching courses, that's great. I didn't even think of that. So
Okay.
to learn to do teaching for yourself, for your own animal, to get you educated and to learn simple things and then to work with the whole. So I had some people that have come from those courses and it's worked out really, really well. So that
Okay.
would be great.
Okay. Last question. Why do we incarnate?
To learn lessons, to understand that we are a divine, that we are not the body. And God knows, only God knows why he made us go through all this to learn this. But that's what I think. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think we're here to create. I think when we incarnate, we're here to create. We create every day, all day long. When we know what we don't want, it helps us figure out what we do want. And we're here to share love, and you're doing both. I mean, you're creating every day, not only just in your profession, but in your regular life all day long. And then what do? We die, we go back to heaven. What do? We create what our next life's going to be. So it's all about creating. That's my opinion based on the work that I do.
That's well,
And
what you do is so interesting to me too. And you'll
yeah,
see in my book, I sought out people like yourself throughout the years.
well, and you brought up Jesus too. There's lots of schools of thought that Jesus, the Bible leaves off when Jesus is 12 in the temple and then it picks back up when he's 30. Well, what was he doing for those other
Well, what I
years?
heard is he went to India, the
Went to
lost years
India.
in India. Yep.
Yeah, and a
And we,
lot of those
yep,
symbols and things
yep.
like that, like somebody told me recently the 3 fingers, there are lots of icons with Jesus holding up 3 fingers, and I have a friend who's a yogi who said, "That's the Kundalini symbol." He
No,
learned all that.
supposedly he spent all those years exactly, and they took it out in 520 AD. That they changed the Bible. They took this stuff about reincarnation out. Yeah, so it's a great rabbit hole to go down. It's it's all about spirit. To me, I mean, this is what I thank God because I wanted to find what my purpose in life was. When I was young, that's what I wanted. I mean, now that I'm older, um, I want to know more, but I'm so grateful that I was able to fulfill this soul's purpose, which is to help the animals and educate the people. But where was I going with this? Um, to me, it's so fascinating what what's beyond this world, And when I watch videos of near death experiences and what people have learned, it helps me to put my life into perspective. It's, we're so um, caught up with the little daily trivial things in life that upset us that we have to get the big picture. And the big picture is to know that we are love and to give love, and we're here to help each other. And there are these troubling things around us, and they're to teach us lessons. The only reason we come in contact with those things is to help us grow and to reframe the tragedies or difficulties in our life to know it's all about us, that the world is mirroring us basically. So there's a bigger picture, and that's what I'm always looking for.
Mhm. Well, thank you for the work that you're doing and for the, wisdom that you're sharing and enlightening all of us about a lot of this stuff that's happening with our pets. I think of you as kind of like a modern day Saint Francesca, if you will, because you're talking about things that are not readily known to the average person, whether they be American or in a different country. I learned a lot just from talking with you today. And so I appreciate you putting yourself on a limb,
Yeah.
really, to
Yep.
talk about this stuff
Yep.
and doing what you can to help the animals that are within your reach to heal, and they're so healing for therefore healing their humans too.
And let me just say one thing before we leave. I mean, as I was coming out about this, because I realized a lot of bad things can happen, it's about truth and courage. So I, it's my book is I'm such a private person, and it's crazy that I put such intimate and make myself so vulnerable in my book. But I feel it's God's life, and we have to speak truth no matter what the consequences. And so I encourage everybody to speak their truth and to have faith that all good will come out of that, because God is love and truth.
That means you have golden ovary courage. Because, guys have breast balls, but girls have golden ovaries. You knew that, right?
No, I didn't. We didn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty. How can people learn more about you and your work?
The best place to go is to my website, which is holistic vet, HOLISTIC vet.us.
All right. And hold up your book for everybody so they can see it and tell us where they can get it.
You can get this on Amazon or, online in Amazon or Children's Health Defense that published it, or from my website. You can buy it also.
Little Miracles Everywhere, My Unorthodox Path to Holistic Veterinary Medicine by Marcie Fallek. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Sending you lots of love from Sweet Home, Alabama. Mwah! And from Connecticut, too, where Marcie is. We'll see you next time. To enhance your spiritual journey, click on one of the videos below and remember to subscribe, leave a comment, and share with your family and friends.